Well, good evening and welcome to this presentation of Black Men Vote 2 presented by Knitted Souls Foundation and A Better Glenn. I'm serving the co-host. My name is John Richard, and my co-host over there is Keith Reddings, and we're going to moderate this conversation among Black men. We have a solid group of Black men here who are concerned, who are advocates for the Black vote. And tonight we're just going to talk about Black men and our voting power. We're inviting all of y'all into the Black barbershop. Okay. Sometimes y'all want to know what happens in our conversation in the barbershop. This is like a barbershop conversation among Black men. Make sure you share this broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms so that you can hear about what's going on in Georgia and also locally in our various contexts that will be in Columbus, in Valdosta, and also in Glenn County. I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, and then me and Mr. Reddings will kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm going to start with Mr. Broadwater. If you don't mind introducing yourself to the folks who are tuning in, let them know who you are and then some of the work that you're doing.
John, thank you very much. I just want to say greetings to the rest of the panelists. My name is Marvin Broadwater Sr. Country boy, raised up in a little small country town in Miller, Georgia, 26 years in the military. And when I retired, I made a community service activist for the rest of my life. And that's what I'm doing. I run 2 state programs. I run 2 men's programs here for Columbus men, former state rep of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Just one that cares about the community and the world and the next generation. And I don't want to bore you all's I do believe the group of out of county, you guys over there are very tuned with the community.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hey, Antoine Walker, you want to introduce yourself, sir? Yes, sir.
Did you hear me?
Hey. Good evening, everybody. Antoine Walker, born and raised in the great city of Brunswick, Georgia, a small community on the south end of town. Dixfield community is where I was reared as a child and kind of moved around the city. I graduated from the better side of Brunswick, Georgia. I graduated from Glenn Academy. Those of you that were less fortunate, I apologize to you. I know that there's been some hoopla surrounding that other school that remains at this time. You continue to rub their hair, rub their faces. All the facts that I just stated are true. Had a fortunate opportunity to go on to Morris Brown College, which you see represented in my background, the accredited Morris Brown College. Graduated from there in 2002. Went on and got my master's degree and been in law enforcement for the past 20 years. Heavily involved in anything related to voter registration, voter mobilization, all the way from my hometown all the way up here to the city of Atlanta. Specifically working with the SELC, working through my fraternity, the fraternity. No knock on any other organizations represented, but I only know one. Only the Purple and Gold, the Omega Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I'm the one that typically likes to be behind the scenes. I have no thought to be the chief. Let me be the Indian because I focus on the work, not the glitz and the glamour, because all the glory is to God. That is me, Antoine Walker. I look forward to serving on this panel and having some stimulating and engaging conversations. I definitely appreciate the invite.
So now I got to go to somebody who might disagree with you on one of your points, and that was going to be Mr. Ronald, since he has a different type of nail in his background. Mr. Ronald, what can you tell us a little bit about yourself, sir?
That's all right. We all fingers of the same hand. So my name is Ronald Screen. I live in Valdosta, Georgia. I am a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm also the president of the Valdosta Divine 9 MPHC. That includes all 9 of the traditional Black Greek letter organizations. I'm also the district deputy of the Valdosta District Number 9 Prince Hall Masons and Eastern Stars. And we work very, very hard every year concerning voter initiatives and voter functions. So I'm happy to be here. I see we got a lot of folks from Glenn County. I'm from Sparta, Georgia, Hancock County, but I played football for the mighty Bradwell Tigers. So some of us might have battled on the football field between Glenn Academy and Brunswick. So we had some really good battles, and nothing but respect and love for you, brothers.
That's great, man. Appreciate you. Mr. Dwight.
Yes, greetings to everyone. My name is Dwight Jordan, and done, and when you've done a lot too, sometimes you try to highlight those things that's most relevant, hopefully relevant to other people, not to yourself. But nevertheless, I would say to some things I've had two careers that I felt that were connected. And I'm appreciative of this fact. I've been in education, specifically special education, and also law enforcement as a officer for the state of Georgia. But outside of those, the working situation, or I'll say career situations, I had the great fortune of having community to come to me, the community in McIntosh County specifically, where my family hails from, to be asked to serve in an elected capacity for the McIntosh County School Board. I had 4 terms there, which comes out to 16 years. So as you can see, the majority of my background in education, and if you're in education, you are a mentor. And I'm presently, when called upon, I'm the president of the Knitted Souls organization or foundation, I can say. I'm very proud because the brothers who are active in there, which are former boss lie of our chapters, have been very hard workers and have done a great job. And that includes Brother Walker and Brother Reddings, and that's just to name a couple here. But of course, there's more to it. But nevertheless, that's an overview. I enjoy really contributing to our community. And at the end of the day, we have different means of attaining, and in some situation, it's necessary. So that's the warrior. If we want to go to a spiritual point, that's the warrior that God calls upon. If God doesn't call you to do that, you weren't meant to be in that particular battle. So you can't sit in judgment on how that battle is fought. So that's what I believe. So when we fight, we fight. So we're in a situation right now, democracy is being, it's a great thing to serve. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming. Mr. Zurich, you ready to roll? We're gonna have to come back to you, brother. So Zurich Samples is on this call.
My name is Zurich Samples. I am a good afternoon, and I'm so honored to serve.
Yeah, you're still breaking up, sir. So I'm gonna go ahead
these
and
gentlemen who I
slide
see
on
giants
over
in the community.
to
A native.
Mr. Reddings until you get somewhere secure, because I think your connection is breaking up. So we'll give you just a few more minutes. Mr. Reddings, what you got?
Thank you, John. How's it going? Good evening, everybody. Of course, I am L. Keith Reddings. I hail from the great city of Brunswick, the county of Glenn, lifelong here, other than the years I spent in Valdosta State, where I played football and obtained my bachelor's degree. Came back here and have been in education for 30 years, retired about 3 years ago. And of course, the great thing about retirement, if you can't find anything to do, other people will find something for you to do. So right now, I am busy. I've had intimate relationship, working relationships with each of the panelists. So I think this is going to be a great evening. Thank you, John.
Oh, thank you. Hey, and so I do have Coach Vaughn here, who is a coach of the undefeated Brunswick High Football Pirates in Brunswick, Georgia. So I want him to be able to introduce himself this evening.
Hey, good evening. I am Vaughn, just Coach Vaughn. Currently, as my brother John, my mentioned, the undefeated. And so everybody know that the speed limit is now 50 around the whole city in honor of win this year. Three-peating. We're not gonna mention too much of that with it. I'm a part of a better league with our community, strengthening our constantly. I'm
Hey, Coach,
also
you starting to break up a little bit too, my brother. I don't know what it is. Have y'all hear him break up a little bit too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
John,
hearing you break up.
an issue with any of the Pirates' internet services. They might want to check on that.
Players.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try to get that figured out, Coach. I don't know if it's the AirPods or not. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Keep talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it better? All right, I'll just work with one AirPod then. Currently a member of a Better Glen that does all kind of and strengthen our community. I am a African American conservation. I was born and raised in Brunswick, Georgia, so was my wife. And I'm also a small business giving African American tours and African American history for I'm an old man, so I kind of bring some of that to the panel for tonight.
Okay. Appreciate it, man. Hey, let's try without the AirPod because you still a little bit breaking up. Y'all can hear me though. I got mine in. Y'all can hear me clearly.
Yes.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And I'm not sure if it's the internet connection either, Coach. So I don't know. All right. So here's what we're gonna do tonight. I want to set the stage, Mr. Reddings, and I'm gonna take y'all all the way back to 1994. Okay, I'm taking y'all back a little bit. Okay. Outkast has an album out. There's a song on the album called "Get Up, Get Out," and Big Boy has these lyrics. He says, "They tell me that I need to get out and vote. Why? Ain't nobody black but running but crackers. Why I need to register? I'm thinking of other things to do with my time." So he's articulating the apathy for black voters that we saw in 1994, and some would argue that when it comes to black men and black male voters, especially in and around Georgia, that we're seeing the same kind of apathy that comes into play with the 2022 midterm elections. And here's why this is important, because Black Americans in Georgia account for over 1/3 of eligible voters in the state. And what you see is when you look at the surveys that have happened in the past couple of weeks, it shows that black voters tend to be the least enthusiastic about voting in these midterm elections. And we got to ask that question, why, when it comes to black men? Why is it that there's a lack of enthusiasm for the midterm elections in and around our various contexts? But before we go there, I want to just talk with these gentlemen about their voting experience and why they have decided to have a passion for voting. I want to talk with y'all about your first time voting. Do you remember that first time where you voted, and what was it that led you to vote for the first time? I'm going to start with you, Twani. I'm not going to be that petty pirate. I'm going to start with you and ask you that question.
I do remember it. I can't remember, what the election. I do know that it was a local election, and for me, it was because of the circle that I had navigated to and began to matriculate in. I am not shy to mention that I don't come from, a family that were voting education and the the strength of voting, and voting not necessarily in national elections, but in the elections that impact you most, in the local elections, your city and your county commissioners. Those elections weren't really drove home with me. It wasn't until I started matriculating at Morris Brown College, and we would have those conversations in the dorm rooms, and when I was able to graduate and come back home and actually get involved, in some things that were going on within my community, that I learned the importance of local voting, not necessarily in the major elections, but all of them are major. If you do your education and you do your research, all elections are important. When you're voting for your school board, you're voting for these other things that impact you more in your community versus voting for the president, voting for the vice president. So I was about maybe 21, 22 years old when I voted, and to see names that you recognize, people that you see when you're out having lunch, people that you see, when you're at a local Boys and Girls Club football game, or you're at a Parks and Recs event. These people who you can actually physically touch, and you see their names on the ballot, and you hear, what their forms are and what they're planning to do that's going to specifically impact you and your family, and you can see it and you can touch it. That's what did it for me, and that's what made me get out. John, as you alluded to earlier, get out and do something, because you can actually, you'll feel your vote. It was always drilled in us, the president, the vice president, not necessarily, you won't really know what a president or a vice president is doing, because it's not going to touch you directly. That's some of the things that we were initially told. But on those local elections, you can actually see the impact. You can see, what's going on with your city and your county. When there's division amongst the city and the county, like the community that we go up in, as a 21, 22-year-old, it was definitely it was a good feeling to know that I had a voice and that I played a part. If you don't cast your vote, then you have to stay on the sideline, because all you're doing is complaining. You only can make change from being at a seat at the table, and your vote gives you a seat at the table. So that was my experience for me.
That's good. So I'm going to go to one of our elder statesmen here, Mr. Broadwater. Do you remember what led you to voting for the first time? Was it a person? Was it an event? What was it?
Simple, John. My mother. My mother, from the time I was 5 until it was time for me to vote, took me to the poll with her. So my first time, I couldn't wait to vote. When I was 15, that's all I would talk about. Where we are right now, no one is instilling that pride in our generation. It doesn't have to be your parent. It could be a mentor. It could be a deacon at the church. It could be someone that has to instill the thrill of voting. We have to make, for a lot of, I deal with a whole lot of young folks. And I listened to when you talked about Big Boy, and he had those lyrics. Why should I vote? If no one makes voting fun or explain to our next generation, I'm probably just on the call, I'm near 65, but I still can remember the very first time, because my mother said, not only is it your right, it is your duty, son. And I still remember that. We have got to instill that into our men. I'm a big advocate of mentors, and I don't care how old you are or how young you are. You must have mentors. I have mentors now that are 7. I talked to one today. So I to get that out about voting. Why? Because my mother told me it's not only my right. Too many folks, she explained to me, had died and fought for that. So it was my duty and to try to encourage generation. But I get up every election. The election to me is the next election. That's the most important one. So after this election, we have to start immediately working on the next election. But somewhere you've got to, every man that's listening to this, every woman that's listening to this, has got to instill it in our men.
Yeah.
Women, go to the polls a little bit more. I know you asked one question. I told you how I am, but I guess this is serious. This is
Yeah.
serious for all of us. But
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
that's what I remember.
What about you, Ronald? First time voting. You remember what led you to do that?
I'm like the brother before me. I remember it being a local election. But voting has always, I did come from a family where voting has always been important. I've come from a small town where election day was almost like a holiday, where they pulled the grills out. All the churches had the vans and the cars and the buses running. It was almost a celebration back in the day. And my father was in the military. So I've always had a patriotic streak, I guess you could say. Not only was this country, our folks helped build this country, but we've served this country just as well as any other group of people. So voting has always been important. And I'm like Brother Broadwater, the next election is always the most important. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hey, I'm gonna ask one more person, then I'm gonna pass it over to Mr. Reddings. Zarek, are you with us now?
Hear me?
I can hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes, sir.
You with us?
Oh man, you breaking up again.
Yeah, breaking up. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, brother. Dwight, you want to go ahead and chime in? Then I'm gonna let Mr. Reddings.
Yes.
ask the question.
In reference to the question, right? First time vote, is that still the topic?
Yes, sir.
All right then. All right. So to your question, I would say the approximate first time I voted, it was 1980. I was a college student, and at that time you had the election between Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And Ronald Reagan, of course, was the villain, from my experience, and notorious for being a union destroyer, which most of my family came out of unions. I was in New York City, which unions were big at the time. He also, something that impacted me even more so because I was just a college student, was basic educational grants. If some of those BEOGs, which Ronald Reagan came in office and got of those programs, he told us to go get an education, then turn around and the process for us to get it and or create, as the brothers know what I mean by barriers to prevent us. But so I vote for those reasons. I voted then for those reasons. I voted because there was this 14-year-old, 15-year-old boy, Emmett Till, who was killed. He could not vote. So I always tell people, they say, why do you vote? I say, I vote for them historically. And one of my favorite women fighters was Fannie Lou Hamer, who they dragged her all around Mississippi, beating her up in county jails, especially that one in particular, Sunflower County Jail, where you had 2 black men who were at the time who were paid by the jailers to beat her up. The whole time her whole major theme was, is this America? But she got the answer every time she got beat. She got the answer to, is this America? So that's why I vote. And as she alluded to the idea that, well, they give a certain amount of things. In a specific case, it was 2 seats. So she's saying is that, well, all of us is tired. We didn't come this far for no 2 seats, in reference to the Mississippi Free Democratic Party. So that's what she alluded to. When she spoke in this example, it speaks to all of us. So that's why I vote. I vote because my grandmother could not vote in McIntosh County. I vote because in McIntosh County, Georgia, my father had to take a to vote. I also, because in this area, they had what are called rotating boxes, where they literally take the ballot boxes, move them in other districts. All this is documented. It's a fact. So even when nobody's worthwhile voting for, presently, I vote for those in the past who could not, from those who were lynched, for those who were murdered, and those who had to, as they say, migrate up north. There was no, that's not a fair labeling. They were refugees from these horrendous, violent conditions. So that's why I vote. And I voted every time. I started voting then. This is how I was born. I was born into this. My parents, specifically my father, had me around all this. That's all I know. So my heroes were not actors, but they were people who were activists. So at the end of the day, that's why I vote.
That's good. That's good. All right, Mr. Reddings, I'm gonna turn it over to you for the next question.
All right, thank you, John. Brothers, I read an article today that said politicians, in their campaigning, they don't speak specifically to Black males. Give me your feeling on that statement, and then maybe a strategy or a message you would have to politicians to get them to understand the importance of speaking to us too. Let's start with my friend Ron.
Well, I think first of all, as Black males, we have to understand the issues in our communities ourselves, and we're not a one-dimensional people. So the problems that we may have in Lowndes County may not be the same problems that you have in Glenn County. So I think that we have to understand what's going on in our communities, and then those things have to become important to us as well. I've had the opportunity to sit down with some of these elected officials, and there was a group of us, and the question was asked, well, what are your top 5 things? It was about 10 of us. Top 5 things that we can help you address. And this is a U.S. congressman. And each one of those people had different things that could be in that list. So that told me right there that we weren't together on the top issues in our community. So we've got to be able to get together on the top issues in our communities so we can communicate that to those elected officials and make those issues important to us.
Nice, thank you. Brother Broadwater, you want to talk on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Reddy. There's a phrase I use when I speak to politicians or anybody that has an elected office. Accountability breeds responsibility. Now, in that phrase, that means that when we talk to our politicians, we have to hold them accountable. But usually what happens here in Columbus, I've gone to meetings, city council, all of our boards that we have here. And I tell them, don't have a meeting at 2:00 in the afternoon because nobody can come. You need to have the meetings on Saturday. Now, what happens is, though, if 20 men, African-American men, and there is an issue that affects the Black community, or particularly, if 20 men go to a meeting, something is going to happen. But as John said earlier, when we talk about our happen in our communities, we have got to. That's why I tell brothers, if you're going to the meeting, you're a real community active, bring 3 others with you. And then tell them to tell another community activist to bring other brothers with them. Politicians only understand one thing, and that's numbers. Because when you have your political elected leader meetings, council meeting, county meetings, and none of us show up, anything can happen in that. But if you have, especially, I'm retired folks. I'm retired. And I talked about this to when I said to much is given, much is required. If you are retired, you have a duty also to give back to your community. So until we get to that mindset of accountability breeds responsibility, it's going to be difficult for us. I'm a realist, and I'm going to be honest with you. Till you say it's in the barbershop, I'm going to tell you that. So we've got to, when we go to these meetings, those of us, and I know everybody on this call does, but we've got to pull somebody with us. Accountability. Politicians understand one thing, and that is numbers.
That's good.
Thank you, Brother Broadwater. Coach Bond, let's see if your audio better now.
Am I working now? Hello? Hello?
Okay, try.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
you
can hear
got
you.
it.
Hello? Okay. All right. So I'm good. All right. You know, like I said, I got 20 years and I always hit from the historical point of view. Traditionally, why these groups don't reach out, they never had to. African Americans didn't always have the right to vote. So they never had to reach out in the history of our community. And largely, we still don't have the right to vote. Men post-Civil War, during Reconstruction, we were given the right to vote. And did we vote? As senators. I mean, that's how much we vote. And so people had to listen to us. Those parties had the right to vote. Now we know that they took the Union Army out of the South and Reconstruction ended. And our voting rights went away for over 100 years, and they're still gone. You have brothers who have all of crimes or committed crimes 20 years ago who still have not been restored there. In what country of democracy can you lose your right to vote as a free person? Nothing to do with voting. So many of these brothers do not have the right to vote. Betty Glenn restored the rights. And African American men largely tuned in and they asked for it. So they are interested in voting, but those political parties are not listening to these African American because largely our rights were taken away. And like the brothers on this panel say, is organized and come together, then they're going to have to respect our wants and needs for their men always express their needs in the community and what they want. You know, they want a better life for their family. They want good jobs. They want good education for their kids, just like anybody else in this country. And so on this panel that African American men definitely have to come together. But you got, we're first to second generation voting, being able to vote. And many of our brothers do not often miss in that conversation. We go out all the time and hand out flyers and talk to different people. And a lot of our brothers, they don't have the right to vote. And in a country so free, in the state of Georgia, when in other states, you can be incarcerated and you can still vote. But here in Georgia, there's something wrong 20 years ago. And you can't vote. That's not democracy. A whole entire population silent, and that's why you don't have to service our population. You restore our right to vote, and their brothers will become interested in voting again.
All right, thank you, Coach, and go Pirates. I'm gonna get more speakers, and then I'm gonna turn it back to you, John. Twani, what? No. Let's see if we can get Zeric audio working. Zeric, can we hear you? Come on, talk to me.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to answer those things. That I do understand that there's a lot of history, but my question to I guess the one now. I was centered around a group of individuals, and the reason why we don't get the reason why politicians aren't directing any kind of their marketing at the squeaky wheel, and I say that because just like African women have been suppressed from voting as well. And I think that the fact of the matter is these women, they are making their voice heard. And just like them, we need to take the same opportunities, sticking it to the politicians. We need to make sure that everything that they say they're going to deliver, and they should definitely follow up on that. We need to make sure that we hold them accountable for what they're saying. So I hate to say it, but the squeaky wheel kind of gets the oil.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, gentlemen. So So let's get real and practical here, okay? We've heard the history, we heard the why behind why y'all voted, right? But I want to talk about the brother say, man, my mama never took me to vote. And the reason that y'all voted is not important enough for me when I hear that. And as I look around Glenn County, the only thing that I realize is that things will never change. Like, I just feel like nothing is ever gonna change in Glenn County. So why is it that I need to, besides the fact that people died for me, I'm glad that they died, but that's not enough for me. There's gonna be somebody out there that says that and is honest about saying that. That was compelling enough for us, right? That was compelling enough for us, but there are brothers who are out there who will say to us that that's not enough for me. And so my question is, how do you get that brother, the one that you have in mind right now, that you know when they hear that conversation from you, they're going to say, well, that just ain't enough for me. I'm going to sit right here on this porch because ain't nothing going to change. How do you get that brother to show up? I'm going to start with Twani, but I'm going to let you go after him, Mr. Broadwater. Go ahead, Twani. I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. I didn't mean to call you Twani. You know, that was.
Oh, it's all good. You family. Actually like that. I appreciate that question, and it gives me an opportunity to highlight some of the panelists on this call. Being a native of Brunswick, Georgia, and I'm fortunate to be on the call with two of my mentors, actually two of my Boy Girls Club. So what Brother Broadwater alluded to earlier about, you know, mentorships and people who stand in the gap, people who may or may not, you know, have had the fortune of being educated about rights and the importance of voting, or just even what it takes to be a man in general. Dwight and Keith Reddings, like I stated earlier, were my Boys and Girls Club coaches. And later, when I was fortunate enough to come into this fraternity, they continued to mentor me. And as I navigated through the fraternity, I ran up on Brother Broadwater, who was my immediate past Georgia State representative, and it was drove home then. So for me, and specific to your question, John, to get that hard-headed brother, you have to speak the language of that hard-headed brother. And I, in fact, and they can attest to it, was that hard-headed brother. You have to cast your nets where they are. You have to go where they are. My chaplain that used to, well, he still resides in Brunswick, Georgia, Brother Terrence Haywood from Zeta Delta Delta, another great Omega man, preached a sermon on that. You're casting your net. You can't be too good to go where the people who aren't going to polls are. You can't be afraid. You can't be timid to go to those people. And I, in fact, again, I'll state it. I am that person. I was that hard-headed child. I was that young man that needed a mentor. Had got several uncles, great uncles, that I was brought up under. But again, you have to have somebody to stand in that gap. And the only way we can get us to the polls is through us. So again, and even on the question earlier, why people aren't coming to us, I always give the example that, you know, for me, I always relate stuff to sports. So follow me with this, and then I'll close, John. You know, when you think about a football team, everybody knows the quarterback. So right now, you know, for someone who's campaigning to win the election, they want to go to the quarterback. So right now, their goal is to win, not necessarily to make an impact. And I'm not knocking any person who's on the campaign trail right now, but they're trying to win. So in order to win, you have to go to the quarterback. And it's unfortunate right now, black men are not the quarterback. We're the offensive lineman. You can't score a touchdown without an offensive lineman. But how many times when the person wins the Super Bowl does the offensive lineman get interviewed? It's always the quarterback. It's always the running back. It's always the wide receiver. It's that sexy position. For some reason right now in this world, black men are no longer that sexy position. Black men are not the ones in the campaign's mind are going to win you election. And until we get back to that, that's the way it is. Anything you hear on the news right now is not promoting black men. It's just not. It is what it is, and that's my opinion. And until we get back to that and being that sexy position, we're still not going to be, you know, what we should be. I still think we're the glue to the family. A family does not move unless you have a man steering it, because that's the order of God. Until we get back to the order of the way it's supposed to be, then we'll continue to be left out. And that's my response to that question.
That's good, man. And it's the only time in my entire life that I've been called an offensive lineman, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Mr. Broadwater, and then we're going to go to Dwight on this question. How do we reach that brother who's on the porch that's saying that to you?
So understand, Brother Walker made a valid point, and I'm going to extend it just a bit. Until things become personal to them, they don't know why do I need to be engaged? My vote not going to count. But just if that you has a son, if you have a son, you understand, even if you don't have a son, you have a niece or a nephew, until they understand or until you convince them that their vote counts, not maybe, sometimes you won't even see things in your lifetime. It might be for the next generation, where your niece or nephew is, your son or daughter is. You know, there's an old proverb that says, the man plants a seed that to a tree that grows up that he will never enjoy the shade of. That's a real man. So until we can convince that person that's sitting on the porch, it's personal to them that they vote, they will not go vote because it's not important. You got to think, you make time for things that you think are important to you. So until we convince in their minds that, look, this is helping your family down, because in this world, as a man, there is somebody that's younger than you that you care about. There's somebody older than you that you care about. But that's my take. So when I go talk to non-custodial fathers, the one thing that I try to do, like Brother Walker said, you got to speak their language. If I don't speak their language, they just look at me and say, there's an old man with a gray beard coming to talk to me about something I don't care about. But when I make it relevant to them, that's the key. It has to be personal. Thank you, John. That's all.
Good. That's good. That's good. All right, Dwight.
All right. I think I would approach this question this way, basically. The question I would be, what are the issues of the Black men? And so that's the basic question, because at the end of the day, from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, and I'm national media, which is a propaganda, that's historically been a propaganda to promote the very same thing and issues and concerns that we have. Many of these issues we haven't even promoted. We haven't even said in our Black community that there's a problem with the Black males. We're responding a lot of times to those issues that were generated, which should have been aborted by the national media for its sole purpose. Now, I think what we have to do specifically is have more town halls. So I'm going specific to the electorate. We have to have more town halls. You have people who get elected and never come back to the community and have town halls. When I was elected, I always had quarterly town halls. And at those town halls, express your policies, your policy initiatives, and so on. Also, that gives the opportunity for the constituents to turn around and then respond, tell you how they feel and things like that. From what I'm seeing is that I don't see any movement towards taking this specific demographic called Black male voters and asking them and targeting them and promoting them. Now, for example, and we want to know about the white female suburban voter. We want to know about the Hispanic voter. We want to know about the Asian. And you literally hear this being promoted constantly through the news media, NPR. Pick it up, pick one in particular. But the bottom line is no one targets specifically the Black male voter to hear what they have to say and what they want to contribute. And I think that's part of the problem right there. Now, one final thing. What we must do too is connect what are called I call them social policies, which are technically women's issues or family issues. Although it's targeting the woman, and when I talk, I speak of Black. You know, everybody else is understood. You speak to who you want to speak to. I'm speaking to Black. So now, so you have issues and policy that they're promoting, which is called social issues, which is also called AKA family issues. This Black boy says, well, I don't have no. Okay, well, aren't you living with your mother who's a single? Does she get SNAPs, supplemental nutritional program, SNAPs? Does your mother receive affordable housing? She's in affordable housing. You know, does your mother have a livable wage? Now, here you are, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you talking about you don't vote. But I'm telling you, it's people who are voting that's as a result of who they elect are putting people in office that's actually negating those type programs or minimizing those programs. So when you tell these Black boys this and you let them know this is hitting your mother, this is hitting your grandmother who you lives with, this is hitting your father if he's incarcerated. So that's you got to connect them to the realism of this. You know, that's selfish on your part to vote. It is selfish. You got to tell them to their face too. We don't have no time to be sugarcoating anything. You tell them to their face. It's selfish. And we sit and we meet with them. But we got to show them that there's a connectivity to the social programs that's being pushed by great political candidates such as Stacey Abrams, for example. But let them know every time we uplift one of the women in your uplift, and we have to see that, and they have to see that. It can't be this whole misogyny thing. You know, at the end of the day, it's about living livable wages. So what's the difference? Women want it because they need it for the family. If you better be out here voting, because I know my tax dollars is paying for some of these. So that's what we have to do. We have to push, connect them to the realism of where they live, how they're living, and let them know, and let those officials too know. You got to target too, because no, I don't. I'm in the what we call the hood, which I think is a negative word, and I'm around. Do you know some of the most thugged out looking brothers are some of the ones who have some of the most brilliant minds? And they're just hanging on the corner with their pants sagged, blunts, whatever. And when you approach them correctly. They'll open their minds. And I always talk to them. I say, well, you know, I'll lay out some policy concern issue. I'm sorry. I'm looking at their face. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not going too far. You know how we older brothers do. Oh, no, sir. No, sir. Keep on going. So they are approachable. That's in the face and contradicts what it says. So we got to promote ourselves. And we have to get our own news medias. We got to operate our own businesses and everything. It's all about us. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's good. That's good. So I'm gonna circle back on that just a little bit, but I want to give Keith another opportunity, another question here of the panelists as we try to get to as much as we can in the time that we have.
You got me muted, John.
You good?
Let's see. Okay, there we go. Here in Glenn County, Brunswick, got a city county dynamic. No, in Muskogee, Columbus, you're consolidated. In our area, the turnout in which we have a African American majority is terrible. How do we get the city folk out to vote? Let's start with Eric.
To what was said earlier about making sure that we have programs to individuals, African American males, African Americans as a whole. And I can be honest, I played sports at Howard Coffin Park. My mom baseball over there. We played football with both the county league as well as the boys club. Is relevant, and there's a way that you can connect what it is that I love with the decision makers, and if ever there's an opportunity to merge those two, I have now a mayor and various commissioners who are at the baseball games, who are at the basketball games where these children are having a lot of impressions put upon, not only educated and mentor the children, but also I think there's some educate the basketball games and the football games. I think that when we can tie those two together, make a larger impact and allow the city residents to understand if we don't vote, if we don't, our parks and recreations and A Street's gym will go away. And when you have to go back and like, man, I remember I hit my first home run on this at this that will no longer be there for my son or my daughter to go to. It becomes real to you. It becomes relevant. It relevant for individuals and allow them to see the correlation between the two. It would allow for voters to take more pride in their voice, their vote, to really hold those individuals, those commissioners, the mayor accountable to make sure they represent.
Thank you, Zeric.
Keith, I hope
similar
you,
dynamic over there.
Keith, I hope you heard that home
What's
run
it, Zeric?
flex from Zerk just now. He just
Yeah.
flexed on that home run that he hit, but I'm gonna leave that alone. I just want to say that. Just wanted to make sure I named that out there.
John, if you remember correctly, we was at First Jordan Grove. I hit the winning ball at First Jordan Grove. Don't forget. Don't forget.
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead, Keith.
All right. Ron, you have a similar down there in Lowndes County, Valdosta. What you got over there going on?
Well, we did, and we still do. But I think just like Brother Broadwater said earlier, just like the politicians understand numbers, our people understand numbers too. So we've got to share the numbers with the people. I mean, there's a lot of voting. There's a lot of public information involved in voting. Your voting record is public. A lot of people don't know that. I can go and look up to see if you voted, when you voted, all that kind of stuff. We can look at the numbers right now. If you want to talk about Glenn County, the numbers right now, 16,997 Caucasian voters have voted so far. 3,492 African-American voters have voted so far. Those are real-time numbers that anybody can look up. You can go to georgiavotes.com and look those up. And then you have 214 Hispanic, 125 Asian, and 1,801 classified as other. Our people understand the numbers. The coach understands the numbers. One of the problems is when the election is over and maybe our candidate didn't win, we get disenfranchised, we get disappointed and all that other stuff, and my vote doesn't make a difference. Well, what I would say to anyone who does not vote consistently or does not vote at all was the votes that it's really the people who don't vote who put people in office. It's the people who don't vote. So when you don't cast your vote for the person you would support, that's like casting a vote for the person you wouldn't support. You would not support, because they don't have to overcome that vote. That's one less vote they have to overcome. And that's what we have to understand. And I wanted to circle back real quick to change this. Like the brother said earlier, you have to meet people where they are. And it's very easy to do. I was taking a few notes while we were talking. How many of us know someone that's an older person or a younger person? How many of us know somebody with diabetes, somebody with cancer, somebody that's been addicted to drugs? How many of us know somebody that elderly that needs to be taken care of? How many of us know someone that's trying to get an education but can't afford to go? All of these things are affected by how we vote. Every one of them. How many hospitals have been closed in Georgia over the last 10, 15 years? How many people have less access to medical care? How long do you have to wait for an ambulance or a fire truck to get to your home? All of these things are controlled by how we vote. Every one of them, by how we vote. So it's easy to connect the dots. You just have to understand how it affects you. If you collect a paycheck, you paying taxes. And if you paying taxes and you're not voting, you don't have any control as to where your tax money go. Any whatsoever. How many of us know veterans that are suffering from PTSD? How many of us know firefighters and police officers that are suffering from the same thing? So I can keep going on and on and on. Meet people where they are. The struggling single mother, struggling single father. You know, these children born with these diseases, and I think a lot of our kids are over-diagnosed, but that's a whole nother conversation. You know, problems in the school system. All these things are controlled by voting. Whether you vote for, I don't care what election, I don't care if we just vote for dog catcher, I'm going to vote. That's just how it has to be. And it has to be made a part of the conversation. You know, we can talk about the ball game and all this stuff. We get mad about folks. When we lose the election, we mad. Well, hold the person that's in office accountable, because he's no longer running for office. Whoever it is, you go sit down, whether you voted for him or not, ask them some questions, because they're supposed to represent all the people at that time. You're not elected just to represent the people that voted for you.
Right.
So you got to hold those people accountable. I'm sorry, y'all. I went on my rant. I apologize.
Hey, Coach Juan, I see you. I see you chomping at the bit over there. Go ahead.
That's how we do in school. You gotta put your hand up. So and I'm being extremely brief. With a Better Glenn, we do a lot of living in the community, telling them to vote. And I know the brothers here, the brothers will make us high five, are always, getting people to the poll to vote. And so we're faced up in this community, as well as the Zetas and other people. So we're face to face with a lot of these people. And so I spend Saturdays with a Better Glenn, taking high school students, and we go and we canvass the area. And I just want to hit you with one conversation that probably sums up just in Brunswick. I had several conversations with a lot of people, but we went to one particular house, and we were telling them, the pamphlet includes all the issues, how they like to do the small farmers, get to go tax free, but that's another subject. This pamphlet, and she said, and she asked me for my name. I told Coach Vaughn. She said, "Excuse me, I don't want to cuss in front of these kids, but the only thing that changed my yard. That's the only thing that changed. Every year, when they ask to put a sign in front of my yard, and that's the only thing that changed on this road. It's been selling drugs down the road from me. They've been selling drugs through all them names that's been on them same road that flood. It flood worse now. The only street is the name on those signs. And that stuck even in everything else, because how true was that? Like the brother was saying, accountable. What are you doing as an elected official? Like the other brother down into the community, are you assessing their needs? But she hit home when she said that the thing that changed is the name in that yard. So I edged about Affordable Health Care Act. So for this election, that's what I've been telling everybody. Now, your health care. We currently have somebody in position that were billions of dollars to save lives. When they close down these hospitals, it doesn't just affect one demographic, it affects all of them. When a hospital such as Grady closed down a part of Grady, it affects us. Care. You have to educate these people on these issues, and you have to hold them accountable. The only thing that changed is the name in the front of a yard. When you step into power, when people see you doing stuff and transforming their community to support you, but if their community isn't changing, if you're not solid funds and making sure that you retain those funds in the city and not off with that.
All right.
I don't want to get myself in trouble.
But
Oh, that's all right. Now,
I don't know what kind of time we're working with, John. I know we're in the barbershop. Unlike the barbershop, they're not going to get barbershop at a certain time.
yeah, so we probably have another 10 minutes or so, and there's a couple of practical things I certainly want to get to, Brother Reddings. But did you have something else, sir?
Okay. I see Brother Baldwin's hand up.
Okay.
Real quick, and I know we kind of moved off of that county city question for a moment, but I just wanted to add this and for the thoughts to the minds of the brothers on this call. You know, a lot of times, you know, I talked about those numbers and Ronald talked about those numbers. Numbers are very important to politicians, but sometimes, and I've used this scenario a couple of times. You problem in your community, whatever it is, but you are community active. Sometimes you don't need the help behind you, but if you collect 500 signatures in your community, you go to that public meeting and you say, city commissioners, county commissioners, my name is Marvin Broadwater Sr., and I have 500 signatures of residents that live in my community with their address. And we are complaining to you all about the drugs being sold at XYZ. Now you're kind of putting yourself out there. But then now they have to do something. Because that is accountability. The numbers that they see, they might not see them behind them. But when somebody said 500 votes, woo, in any city or district, municipality, or any district of any municipality, when you say 600, 1,000 votes, it's a huge difference. Whether they voted for that person or not, they're voters. So I just wanted to put that in our ears, because I know everybody on this call here ain't afraid to get out there and walk and do whatever. And sometimes, like Brother Walker said, you ain't got to be in charge to make a difference. You can do it behind the scenes sometimes. I'm through, John. Keith, that's all I had.
Can I say something? Probably 15 seconds.
Go ahead.
Probably 10 seconds or less. Okay, here's the deal. My whole thing is about connecting black male voters to the issues. And it just dawned on me in writing this, and I also saw one on the side. Basically that here's another thing you sell to black males, the idea that, do you know a question that you elect your judges, your probate judge, your Superior Court judge, and everything, the same one who's going to sentence you. Do you know that you elect your prosecutor 4 years? So to get them to understand, and they have a connectivity to that and understanding, because they have members in their family too have been incarcerated at some point in time. So we can show them the physical side, the tangible side of the issues, and that they are there. Then we can get them out to vote. So I don't want to overrun, but that's what I want, because the prison systems are what they are.
John, all I want to say before to you is, I think Ron led up to it, is every time the polls are open, don't get up the president. You need to be out voting. And just call yourself a voter. That's what I try to be now. Every time they open, trying to go. So if we can convince all of our people to do that, then we'll have won the race. Back to you, John.
That's good. All right, so here's my closing question, probably a fussy moment for me. Okay, I'm about to fuss just a little bit to everybody. So we talked about voter education. We talked about voter registration. We talked about mobilization. Here's the issue, though. Okay, And here's what I need y'all to hear. When these people do eventually get to the polls, there are years in Glenn County, in other counties and cities, where candidates are running unopposed, where they don't have a choice, where we have not provided the people the freedom of choice. So they get into the, we educated them, we registered them, we mobilized them, but they get into the booth and their ballot does not present them with a choice that allows them to speak to the issues that they're dealing with. And oftentimes, a lot of those issues are equity-based issues that they need someone else to speak into that. But you have a candidate, and listen, I don't care about donkeys or elephants, okay? I just want somebody that has the character and the integrity to handle the equity issues in our community. And here's our responsibility on this call and the responsibility of people who are watching. We're responsible to raise up leaders who will run for office locally so we present the people with a choice. So my question for you brothers on this call is, how do we work together collectively to create a leadership pipeline of specifically Black men who will train, I said train, y'all. We're not just gonna run somebody who don't know nothing, okay? Train and run for local office in our local communities. I'm gonna start this with Brother Walker, Antoine, and then we'll move over to Mr. Broadwater, Dwight. I'm going to give everybody a chance to close on this one for me, okay? So what you think, Twani?
So I definitely appreciate the question. Can you hear me? I had to switch to my phone. My computer died. So I definitely appreciate the question, and I knew we were eventually going to get off eggshells with this conversation. So what I would like to discuss as a young Black male who's coming up in a small community, I want to address the elephant in the room in small communities. For some reason, there seems to be this rite of passage that you have to go through as a young leader before people are willing to train you. And I think that is a big myth. If someone shows the enthusiasm and the willingness to learn, because they don't come from your stock, because they don't come from your community, because they are refusing to be the puppet that you once were, that does not mean that they are not viable or potential candidates to help be a leader within the city. So until we as a community to start to raise up our young leaders who are true young leaders and not puppets, we'll continue to have the same dynamic that we'll have. We'll continue to go to those doors that Jason and others of A Better Glenn go to, and we'll get the same answers, because all it's going to be is a changing of the sign. Because when they're running their races and they're campaigning, they're begging for your vote, they're willing to do whatever it is that you ask them to do to get you to vote for their name on the ballot. Then once they get in, things start to change. They start to stutter a little more. Well, now I'm only one vote. I'm working against a committee that's not willing to support me. But that's not what you told me when you were on the campaign trail. And until we get those leaders who have the authority and the enthusiasm to put a foot down, when you have a county commission to where you are the majority, but you're scared to put the real issues that affect your people on the meeting agenda. When you're in the city of Brunswick, where you have the numbers, and I'm going to speak specific, get mad at me. I'm used to it. Let's get off these eggshells and let's speak truth. And we're a Black man and we can't speak truth, then this whole meeting right now is null and void. Let's hold our elected officials accountable. You did what you had to do to get my vote. Now that you have my vote, be my voice. I don't work for you, you work for me. And when we have young men and young women that have the enthusiasm, they have the wherewithal, but just need a little training, need to be chilled just a little bit, wrap your hand around that young man, that young woman, and train them and not make them become your puppet, because they don't want to go through this rite of passage that you have. They don't want to go into the meeting with your partners who rub your back and vote the way you want them to vote, because that's what you did throughout your entire tutelage. I think of people, when I think of unsung heroes, I think of true pioneers. I think of, God rest her soul, I think of the Annie Polites, who didn't want any name recognition, but there was never an issue where she wasn't present until she took her last breath. Those are my true heroes. When I think of heroes, I think of a Zach Life, who for his own tactics may or may not be received by all, but he is a people for, he's for all of the people. So he is the type of people, and she is the type of person that we need to wrap around. We have no succession planning within the Black community because we don't want one to outdo the other.
Until we get rid of that mentality and we start to raise up our people, we won't have mayoral races with 4 or 5 candidates in it and you're splitting the vote and the other candidate potentially winning, because we'll all come from one house. Until we create one house and all of our leaders come out of that one house, we'll continue to be presented to other people as a divided community. That's all I got, John.
Now the doors of the barber shop is now open.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Can't say amen. Can't say out.
Collect your plate.
Yes, sir. All right, Ronald. What you got for me?
Now I
brother?
went to him who's able to keep us up.
Oh man, it's hard to follow that up, but
Yes, sir.
I just want to pose the question. We've all been paying bills in a house that if you don't vote, you don't have no say-so in. Your vote is your say-so. So every one of us have a household and we want to be the man. Well, the man got to pay some bills. And if the man paying the bills or the woman paying the bills, they want some say-so in the household. If you don't vote, you don't have no say-so in the household. Now, speaking to building up leaders, that is the philosophy we have to have. If you won't say so, first of all, you got to be able to pay some bills in the house, which means you got to go to work. You got to establish yourself. You've got to be able to be a leader in the community. I've seen too many leaders or too many wannabe leaders pop up, but they can't take care of their own household. So how you going to help us take care of our political household? If you struggling at home, how you going to prioritize what's going on in our community? So that's the first thing. We got to teach folks how to take care of themselves and establish themselves so they can be of service in the community. You know, that is, I think that is the biggest thing we see with, and it's young and old, you know. And the other thing we have to realize, and like you said, you don't care about the elephant or the donkey, but they both eat the same grass and give you the same crap. So, you know, we have to realize that. We have to realize that. That, you know, everybody, all skin folk ain't kin folk. I think that's been proven already. So we do know that with someone who shall remain nameless that's running. You don't have to be real smart to run. That's been proven. You know, you don't even have to be real smart to be president. That's already been proven. So, but in order to really groom our leaders in the community, it has to start locally. You don't start grooming somebody to be a congressman. He need to be maybe a city councilman or county commissioner first. You know, groom people to serve first. You know, when you learn how to serve, you'll get to the leadership part, because what people don't understand is once you get into a leadership position, you are a servant. Let he who shall be called chief among you, let him be a servant. You are a servant. And it's not all about being in charge, but we have to groom our young folk to serve. Groom our young folks to serve first.
That's good. So we're going to go Mr. Broadwater, Dwight, Zarek, and then we're going to close our time out together just with some closing thoughts.
John, I'm going to try to be very brief here. But let me address something that Brother Walker said first. To the old folks, sometimes you got to get the hell out the way. And I almost said barbershop talk. I almost said something else, but you need to get the hell out the way. You don't own or hold. You can't hold any seat forever. Time changes. The way our structures are run, they change. They evolve. There's a process of evolution. So when I heard Brother Antoine Walker tell me in Savannah, Georgia, he remembered that day, and I still remember. He said, "How do I get on the council?" Here's a young, energetic brother. Somebody that needs to recognize that. Now, to be more specific to your question of how we do this in the community, I heard Mr. Ronald say that he's the president of the NPHC in Valdosta. So that means, you see, in 1965, we were all together. Why? Because we had one element that we were fighting against: prejudice, racism. Those are the things that we had to be together. But see, when we got our bank accounts a little filled, we got our sheepskins on the wall, we said, okay, I done made mine, now everybody else need to make theirs. But if we are together, and the NPA, I mean, the Divine Nine, the Mason, the Eastern Stars, the 100 Black Men, all presidents need to be put in one room. And that in that one room, you decide who are the 2 or 3 leaders in your community that one of them need to be on that ballot. But we are so inclined that folks come in and say, hey, Marvin, I think you would be a great candidate. And then that same person go down and tell Keith, we're going to support you 100%. We're going to give you $1 million. Then they go tell Ronald, yes, Ronald, we got you. But they're only putting up one candidate. So when we get together and we say we got one candidate, we have selected one candidate. One.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear
That's
that?
how we change. That's how we get together. And it can't be just, God knows I love Omega Psi Phi, but it just can't be Omega Psi Phi. It's got to be the Divine Nine. It's got to be the Masons. It's got to be everybody. It's got to be folks who don't even belong to an organization at the table. That's the key. When we do that, I don't care what community you're in, Columbus, Atlanta, Douglasville, you will be strong. Your community will start to change. You will get those leaders into office that you want, that will make a difference, that give a damn. That's what has to happen. I'm through.
Yeah,
John,
great.
I thank you.
No, that was great. That was great. We got to make sure we take heed to that conversation, because I've seen too often where we divide the Black vote because we never come together around an issue, and then we wind up with issues that affect our local community. Dwight and then Zarek, and then we're going to bring it on home.
All right. As I recall the question, I would basically say that the best way to do it is to expose our youth, and exposure to things. The youth, I mean, those people who are coming. If you expose them to the processes, they see you in act, only they'll take that. And so that's the best thing we can do. We take, and I've seen this Coach Vaughn do this as well too. But the bottom line is you these various meetings so they can go to meetings, and then you talk to them in advance and let them know, here's the issue. Would one of you like to sign up with? So you put them in that actual situation where they have to do it, the practicum aspect of it. And then that's how they'll eventually grow into it. I remember being in school, and as a teacher, I taught elementary, middle, and high school. Things like, well, we need more Black mentors, Black male mentors, and everything. I told them, I said, listen, when I roll up in here, I don't even have to say anything. Just by my mere presence as a Black man, I'm mentoring. So we gotta sell ourselves too, and let people know. I don't have to have no special format to just talk to people and talk to young folks, and you do what you do. At the end of the day, I learned this from Boys Club. Those boys are watching you. Those young ladies too are watching you, and they're seeing every day you're mentoring without even talking to anybody direct. Today, watch that. So to close out, basically, I have to refer to this. Everybody was talking. It reminded me of one of the excerpts of Dr. King's speeches, where he said he talked of voting, and he basically said this, to paraphrase, that it's a dilemma that we have with voting, that the Black man of the South, when I say men, that includes women, but the Black man of the South, he has no right to vote. In other words, he's been blocked, prohibited from voting. Then you have conversely the Black man of the North, who can vote but have no one to vote for. See, and that's the dilemma. So, but at the end of the day, so you got to ask yourself, so then what's the purpose of voting? I do know this much, that the right to vote is so powerful in this nation that I know I can speak to the fact that I've known that parolees who got out on parole and who were making $80,000, $90,000 a year plus after taxes, all right, but they could not vote. So, and the first thing they do is when you're arrested, they take everything away from you, which the most important thing, and they give everything back except right to vote. Some people never get it. So that shows you how important the right to vote is. And so that's the thing we have to emphasize and connect it to the young folks so they can see. And everybody's talking about being armed and everything. You're no more to show that the best way to show that you're armed, the greatest weapon you can ever have is the right to vote. And then we just got to expose that to the people, keep giving people, meaning young folks, and keep showing them ultimately we'll win over a generation. But we have to be mindful of how we walk. So
that's good.
Just
All right, Zeric,
to follow up on that, our brother Dwight, a few years back now, a little poem says, "I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one. Rather someone walk with me than just to show the way. Eyes better people and more willing than their ear, but no. Oh Lord, don't let me now. But what I'm saying is reasons why I joined the Make South Hours because of the mentors that was at the Boys and Girls Club at the middle school, who was on the baseball field, and like these brothers walk through any park, who they were when they were coming, and it is so important that we have like a like Mr. Jordan, like Mr. Keith, who are in our communities making a difference. And so the more that we continue to be that example that people want to follow, it's going to make sure that we have a community to go back home. I did have to leave. I did leave Brunswick and moved up to Savannah, but I'm all down because of so many things that were poured into me from the community. As the senior population, I won't say math, for the next generation to come through, it is so important that and two, attention spans are changing. I used to go back and forth a long time ago because he had a story that was at least 2 hours long. Cut it down to an hour. Give me sound bites of that sound knowledge, so that I can definitely and I can digest it. But at the same time, I would say to individuals, be ready to be trained. Don't think that it's going to matter, but be ready to be trained so that we can lead the next generation.
That's good. Hey, Coach, any last motivational words before I close our session out? I want to thank you, brothers, for joining us tonight. I'm going to get some reminders on voting that's coming up here in a couple of days, but anything you want to say, Coach, hopefully without breaking up on me.
Okay. Can I be heard? I'm good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Man, wow. Thing about training. One thing in Glenn County we got to do is use for African American men to be leaders. I mean, on this panel with Keith Reddings, who retired from education, who was position. You look at the director boards of various around here, and you don't see a lot of African American men in leadership positions. Is it systematic? It's the barbershop. Y'all know what it is. Promote these African American men to leadership positions so they can take these leadership positions in their community. But when you are sitting on a panel with very educated people in most Glenn County, to get that opportunity, I sit now with a bachelor and a specialist degree and over 15 years experience in education. African American men as leaders in our community. Their boys should look total, and therefore they become leaders in the community as well. That's where you get your training. Become a leader in these different companies and businesses around here, and then you become a leader in your community. Leaders in their companies and these different business organizations, you cut them in the community. Systematically, it's done.
That's good. Hey, listen, here's what I want to do as I close our time tonight. I want to challenge everybody who's listening. I want to challenge everybody on this call. I want 2023 and 2024 to look different in Glenn County, in Columbus, in Valdosta, and in terms of education, mobilization, registration, but also the ballot. Like the conversation that we had tonight, hopefully prompts further conversations around us unifying around getting someone to run for office and becoming the candidate for the block of Black people who can now become a voice. We're tired of being the offensive line, 20. We're tired of being the offensive line. We want to be the QB. We want to be the wide receiver. We want to be the quarterback. We want to be the ones that are interviewed on the other side of that election and not be an afterthought. And the way we're not going to be an afterthought, y'all, is for us to get together, something that we haven't done in a long time as a community, and to be able to coalesce around one agenda. And that may be one candidate that will let Glenn County know, let Valdosta know, let Columbus know that we ain't playing with y'all. We ain't playing with y'all in these streets, and Black men are going to lead that charge if we take what we say tonight and actually do something. I did not sit on this call for an hour and a half for us not to do nothing about what we talked about. Okay. So our next steps need to be us having a conversation, a collective conversation about what 20 looks like and what 24 looks like for the Black community. No, we're not a monolith, but we have issues that we can agree on, and we can find candidates who are not going to be that candidate you talked about, 20, that just want our votes, and then on the other side of it, they're going to be whatever they're going to be in office because they don't care about the apathy that happens afterwards. So that's what we're committing to do as a Better Glenn, and that's what we want commitment from all of you all on this call and those of you who are joining us here live. Now, with that being said, appreciate you gentlemen for joining us tonight. Appreciate y'all, and we're going to be circling back with all the Divine Nine in Glenn County, okay? Y'all don't hold it against me. I'm not a member, okay? But I love all of y'all, and we're going to figure some things out locally in Glenn County, and we're going to make it work, all right? Appreciate y'all, gentlemen. Yes, sir. And let me tell you, we leaving the barber shop, and all y'all lineups looking tight. So we got a good little shape up while we out here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.